Jay here for Stretford Paddock. This is the Paper Talk. We're live, we're in the studio. You know what to do. Apologies, we are 5.5 minutes late, I think. There just a few gremlins in the system we were sorting out, but we're here now. That's all that matters. So make sure you are hitting like, share, and subscribe. We've got loads of stories to get through. Some of them are worth getting through. Some of them I'm going to highlight because they are pathetic. Yeah, that's the only way to describe them. Loads of people already in the chat. Renato Tello, Colin Coupleditch, Michael Beasley. Oh, Michael Beasley there. What was that? Don't make me turn talk spot on. Wow, that's a threat. Seriously, you don't want to go down that road. Paul Smith, Trans Tucker, late for your own funeral. Yeah. Min Hoyt Lund, forgive me if I butchered that one. BMW Racing, 1974 says, you don't look like a Gremlin, Jay. Yeah, very good. Mickey Tracy, Will Girling, all in the chat. Forgive me if I missed anyone. Hit that like button. Let's get into it. There's a few stories. I want to start with what can only be described, right? And I'm going to highlight this because it's pathetic and rubbish, and I want to talk about how awful it is. This story in the Daily Mail, or the Daily Fail, as some people call it. I'm here all week. Yeah, Andre Onana's handling woes continue with the goalkeeper. And this is unreal. This is earth-shattering. Dropping his car keys as United squad return home after their Bayern Munich defeat. Utter drivel. What is going on? I mean, this is just the only reason I'm highlighting this just shows when you're a keeper at Manchester United, the amount of nonsense you have to deal with. We know what happened with Andre Onana in Bayern Munich. He came out after the game in Bayern Munich and admitted he cost us a goal. He actually said he cost us the game, which I thought was probably him being kind to his teammates. I don't think the game was lost after 20 minutes. I think we still could have won it, or still could have at least got something out of it. And he wasn't helped by a pretty pitiful defence at times and a midfield that just didn't get to grips with the Bayern Munich midfield. So it was easy for him to sort of just ignore that and not come out and not say anything, and it would have been a bit of a collective responsibility. But he came out and he took it all on himself. So I respect that. Things like this, it's just kicking a man while he's down. It is nonsensical. I'm not going to go into it too much because I don't want to give it the sort of the clicks or anything that they want. I just wanted to use it as an example of some of the drivel that is being posted about Manchester United, and in particular Andre Onana at the minute. He's got a lot to deal with, and these articles, it's just nonsense, isn't it? Adam Sanderson says, morning, big story. Mighty Muppet says, Onana drops a pie outside Greg's. That's actually morning. That's actually more of a story, to be honest with you. Jacoya Trot says, morning, Jay. Yeah, just a load of rubbish. Right, let's get rid of that anyway, because I don't even want to give it any more attention than it deserves. The only reason I'm mentioning it is because it's absolutely pathetic on all fronts. There's another story here about David De Gea. This is another thing that's going on with Andre Onana. I spoke about this a little bit yesterday, and it's going on a lot with the fan base online. Is this constant pivoting and constant mentioning and constant talking about David De Gea. De Gea would have saved that. Oh, well, De Gea did all these things. What about David De Gea? De Gea's gone, right? He left. He went at the end of the season. And a lot of people who are now sort of saying, pining for him and saying we shouldn't have got rid of him, were actually criticising him last season. I loved David De Gea for many years. I thought it was time for him to move on. There's an article here. We've got it, I think, in the Metro. I think it might have come from the Sun. Hashtag don't buy the Sun. We certainly won't be putting the Sun on screen. It says Man United players angry with Ten Hag's treatment of club legend. Then goes on to talk about how the fact that senior Manchester United players are angry in which the way David De Gea's Old Trafford career was brought to a brutal close. Now, there's two ways to look at it. You can look at it and you can go, we should have done it differently. We should have announced it earlier. We should have given him the opportunity to have a testimonial. I actually think he did deserve one. And he could have parted ways in a respectful way, if that makes sense. Not respectful for him, but from the club maybe. And the way it sort of went down wasn't great, was it? It was a bit like he's just, you know, gone. That's it. He's gone. There was a contract. There was talk that there was a contract put on the table, and that contract was taken away, and then a contract on lesser money was offered. I don't know how true that is. There was a few reports on that though. But either way, David De Gea, he left. Now, according to this article, it says here that players weren't happy with that. They felt he'd been mistreated by Eric Ten Hag. Now, the one thing I do want to say this about Eric Ten Hag and the way that it went down with David De Gea, there was some pretty reputable journalists saying that Eric Ten Hag didn't make his mind up about David De Gea, until the very end of the season, until the FA Cup final, and might have been the FA Cup final was the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of him wondering or thinking maybe he could continue with David De Gea as his goalkeeper. We know there's a limited amount of money you've got to spend, so there would have been an argument maybe you could have saved the money you spent on Andre Onana. This is an argument a lot of people are putting forward now, and spend that elsewhere, brought in another striker, not just Rasmus Højlund, or another defender. We know obviously now with our injuries, we are pretty threadbare when it comes to our defensive options. However, I don't sort of think it was a bad idea for Eric Ten Hag to say, right, David De Gea needs to go, because I think after that FA Cup final, everyone was seeing that. But it shouldn't have got to just the FA Cup final, is my point. I think you could see that throughout the season. David De Gea, I know he was the Golden Glove winner. I know he'd had a lot of clean sheets, but he'd had a lot of games that were very un-David De Gea-like. You go back a few years, David De Gea, you could count the number of mistakes he'd made in his career on one hand. He was infallible. He just kept us in games. He made some ridiculous saves. There was performances that are among the greatest performances I've ever seen by anyone, not just goalkeepers, in a United shirt. You look at I think away at Wembley I think it was a league game at Wembley against Spurs when Spurs were playing at Wembley. I think there was a game at the Emirates where the Spurs one we won 1-0 when Marcus Rashford scored. The one at the Emirates, I think we won 3-1. David De Gea saved, other than the one goal that Arsenal scored, everything. He was unbelievable. It was one of the all-time great goalkeeping performances. But those were a few years ago. And I think more recently we've seen game after game where you started questioning him. You go, David De Gea should have done better. David De Gea cost us that goal. David De Gea cost us that game. We saw it last season with Brentford. Just like Onana, he came out, he took responsibility, fair play to the kid. We saw it at West Ham, we saw it at Sevilla. Pretty woeful performance away at Sevilla, and we saw it in the FA Cup final as well. When you look at that second goal in particular from Ilkay Gundogan, he didn't move his feet, he could have got there and he didn't. So I felt like David De Gea needed to move on. I was slightly surprised it took till the FA Cup final for Eric Ten Hag to make that decision. I thought he would have seen it throughout the season that David De Gea isn't the player you need. Especially, I'm not just talking about shot stopping and playing out from the back, which is what Eric Ten Hag seemingly wants to do. You can see that David De Gea isn't that guy. So maybe he could have made a decision earlier and told David De Gea about that. Maybe he wanted to see who he could definitely bring in. I'm not sure. But whichever way you look at it, it wasn't a great end to David De Gea's career at Manchester United. And apparently, a few players are unhappy about that. Sancho says the Metro are owned by the Mail, that I remember. You can't win. It's all, whether you don't post the Sun, you post it from somewhere else, it's always going to go back to a paper that none of us really like. Aaron says in the super chat, in summer we told players we didn't want them and failed to sell them. Has players lingering around, this is a really good question, created a toxic environment in the team? Maybe it has. Maybe it has. Maybe there's an element of that, because if you've got players that are still there, surplus to requirements, probably really and truly don't want to be there, but want to get the sort of move that suits them, but haven't got that move, then maybe that does create a bit of an atmosphere that's not great within the dressing room. You look at Harry Maguire, he's obviously not got a move. There was talk of him going to West Ham. For whatever reason, that fell through. It didn't happen. He's still there. Scott McTominay is another one. There was talk of him going to West Ham as well. He was linked with Newcastle as well, even before that, and even Fenerbahce right up until deadline day. Neither of those moves happened as well, so maybe that had a bit of an effect where you've got those two players. You've now got the Jadon Sancho situation as well, which doesn't help matters. Just on the Jadon Sancho situation, there's a story here you can see where it talks about Jadon Sancho and getting a move, I think it's in the Independent. It says the clock appears to be ticking on Sancho's time at United. It's the Independent quote in the Daily Star, I think, says, the Star reports United are willing to sell the England winger in January for less than the 73 million they paid Borussia Dortmund. Obviously, I don't think there's anyone out there, whether that's a Manchester United fan or anyone else, who genuinely believes we can get the £73 million we paid for Jadon Sancho. That's not going to happen, is it? For starters, he's a little bit older, and for seconds, he hasn't had a good time at United. He hasn't really shone at United. At Dortmund, his stock couldn't have been higher. When we bought him, I think he just had a season where he was basically a goal involvement every single game. I think it was around the 39 appearances, 36 goal involvements. It was around that figure, I think, is what Jadon Sancho, the numbers that Jadon Sancho put up in his last season. He helped Dortmund get into the Champions League. He helped them win a trophy. I think he scored twice in the final as well of the German Cup. He was very, very productive, and some of his performances were just if you put the goals and assists on side, they were mesmerising. You're watching him, you go, this kid's tearing this defence apart. What a joy to watch. Even an England shirt, He'd had some good performances as well, but not many, but he'd had enough where you go, okay, there's something there, the kid there. And also, he's 21, he's going to kick on. He was at City, he chose to go to Dortmund by all accounts. It wasn't like he was bombed out of City. He chose he wanted to go to Dortmund, get first team football, did really well at Dortmund. And then Manchester United, who'd been chasing him for a long time, finally got him. £73 million, a lot of money, but at the time, you kind of expected something like that. It wasn't long ago, before we made that £73 million successful bid, that there was talk of Dortmund wanting 100 million or upwards of 100 million. And that's excessive. But 73 million, while it's a lot of money, it kind of made sense because you look at it and go, okay, we've wanted him for ages. He's 21. He's absolutely smashing it. Yeah, all right. It's not really happened for him at Manchester United for a multitude of reasons. Obviously, when he came in, he was the big signing. Then Ronaldo comes in. Plus, we lost the manager not long into Jadon Sancho's time there. We bring in Ralf Rangnick. That era, if you can call it that, was a bit of a disaster. Then obviously we have the second season under Eric Ten Hag. Under Eric Ten Hag, at one point, for whatever reason, Jadon Sancho needed to go away to the Netherlands to get himself ready to play for Manchester United. He comes back, does okay, doesn't really do a lot. Now, after the Arsenal game, Eric Ten Hag calls out his performances in training. Jadon Sancho pushes back on social media, and we're left in a situation where Jadon Sancho is no longer available because he's training with the Resis or training on his own. So it's not been a great time, has it, really, if we're looking at Jadon Sancho and what's going on for him. So it's no surprises to me that we can't get more than the £73 million we paid for him. So that kind of makes sense to me. There's also another little bit in there. It says here, another winger is being linked to a move to Old Trafford with Manchester United among several clubs, keen on Club Brugge youngster Antonio Nusa. The Daily Express reports Arsenal and Chelsea are also interested in the 18-year-old Norwegian who is valued around 30 million. One to keep an eye on. Let us know what you think about Jadon Sancho. Let us know what you think about any of the stories I've been covering. Just have a look. Joy Boy says, no more Dortmund players, please. We've had off Dortmund, we've had Shinji Kagawa, we've had Henrik Mkhitaryan, and we've had Jadon Sancho. Unless I'm missing anyone. It's not really been a happy hunting ground, has it, in terms of us buying players from Dortmund, but you never know, things can improve. I wouldn't just say we'll never get another player from Dortmund, although the record isn't great. The truth says poor United. Sub-Zero AA1 says Eric should send them all to the reserves. Hit that like button, please, people. If you're watching, hit the like button. BMW Racing 1974 says Tony looking for a move in January. I've said that a few times last season that we should go for Ivan Toney. Don't see why not. You may disagree. I think we need another striker. We're so threadbare up front. If anything happens to Rasmus Højlund, we're having to turn to Anthony Martial. You saw the reaction from United fans when Martial came on against Brighton. There was booing. Now people saying, well, that was booing Højlund coming off, not Martial coming on, but it's the same thing, innit? So maybe we do need to bring in someone like Ivan Toney. Personally, I'd have him. Let us know what you think about that suggestion. Alpha Shifter says Tony wants Liverpool. Kyle Niekirk says look at Gundogan and Akanji talking about Dortmund players. Fortunately, they did really well, but they did really well at Manchester City, which is it's a bit annoying, isn't it? Right, should we move on anyway? I want to talk about this article here in the Athletic from Laurie Whitwell, and it's saying here that Eric Ten Hag built this Manchester United squad, so he must take responsibility. Now, it's basically saying that because Eric Ten Hag has built this squad, he's bought these players, this is his team, that he's got to take some responsibility for the way things are unfolding. Because obviously last season when we lost to Brentford 4-0, that was more or less the team he inherited. Yes, you had Martinez and he had bought players, you had Christian Eriksen, but by and large that was the team that he'd inherited. Now you look at the players that he's got: Andre Onana, Lisandro Martinez, Casemiro, Rasmus Højlund. Those are his guys. These are his players. So it's becoming more and more like it's his team. Also, some of the problematic players, the players that we've had question marks around, Harry Maguire, Jadon Sancho, Cristiano Ronaldo, they've all moved on. They've gone. Oh, well, no, they're not all moved on, sorry. Ronaldo's moved on. Sancho's not available because he's obviously, he's had that spat with the manager. And Harry Maguire, although he was injured for the Bayern Munich game, hasn't really been starting for Manchester United. So I think the point that Laurie's making here is the fact that Eric Ten Hag is going to have to take responsibility here. You can kind of get away with it a little bit in your first season when you've had a horrific the club's had an horrific season just before you've arrived. The Ralph Rangnick time was just terrible, wasn't it? We finished, what was it, 6th, got knocked out of the cup competitions almost as soon as Ralph Rangnick came in. We lost all the cup games, basically. I think we drew with Atletico away and then we lost at home. It was a shambles of a season, and some of those defeats were really deflating. Ten Hag's come in. First season's gone pretty well, winning a trophy and finishing top 3. Not been all players sailing, we can admit that, especially some of the away results. But now you're looking at it and you're going, yes, we have got lots of injuries, which I'll get to in a minute. We've got loads of injuries, but that's still your team. That's your team. And when you are losing these football matches, people are going to be looking at it going, you can't use the excuse of what you've inherited now. You have got to sort of step up and take responsibility. Now, the injury crisis, and I will use the word crisis at United, is horrendous, and that's going to give him some leeway. But now we're getting into these games, these fixtures, where people aren't going to buy that excuse. I don't think so anyway. You may disagree. Get involved in the chat and the comments. Let us know what you think. Do you think that it is kind of time for, well, not time, but do you think now we're at the point where it is Eric Ten Hag's team and people are just going to go, look, there's no excuses here? Or do you feel, because of the injuries we've got, because of the situation with Anthony, which isn't his fault, I mean, the manager's fault, because of the situation with Sancho, that maybe you do give him a little bit of leeway there? Let us know what you think. Trans Trucker says, Rangnick, this requires open heart surgery. He wasn't wrong. He wasn't wrong, really, was it? Didn't he say we needed 10 players? And since then, I think we've signed about 12. So, and we're not going to win the title, are we? So he was right. But I think the thing with Ralph Rangnick is, yes, he was right. And yes, it was refreshing to hear a Manchester United manager saying the things he was saying. But also, it was obvious. It was very obvious, like, what he was saying. Like, when he said, well, this team is miles away from where it needs to be. It needs open heart surgery. We need 10 players. The thing that made that so fascinating was you had a United manager, a current United manager, telling it as it was. It was true. But I think deep down we all knew that. Also, when he was saying he wanted these players, he wanted Vlahovic, he wanted Alvarez, he wanted Haaland, he wanted whoever. He was just naming all the best players out there, saying he wanted them, but he wasn't allowed to buy them. Again, I get it, and he named all the best young players basically in Europe, and you're like, oh, if only we'd have listened to Ralph, if only we'd have got them. I'm pretty sure that when he came in, he'd have known the club weren't going to back him. He wanted to bring in some players in January, and it's a shame he couldn't, because I think that could have made a difference that season. And it was annoying. Me and Joe were talking about this the other day, about how we just wrote off a season. We just seemed to, almost a month into his tenure, went, oh, well, this is another season wrote off. A lot of that was down to the players maybe giving up a little bit, the manager obviously only being here for a few months. But yeah, it felt like very, very quickly into his tenure, we'd just gone, right, well, this season's a write-off. We're not doing anything. We're out of the Cups. The league, probably not going to get top 4 anymore. Never mind. Maybe we should have listened to him a bit more. Maybe we should have backed him. Let us know what you think. Aaron says, a player like Scott, Sancho, Maguire, etc., all knowing they aren't going to play, is an issue. Santa not saying, says we need 10 players, and the board are telling Ollie he can only get 3 per season. Yeah, if you saw that article in The Athletic, the interview with Andy Mitten interviewing Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, where Ole Gunnar Solskjaer says he was basically given 3 players limit when he was at United, even though we obviously needed a few more. Let us know what you think about that. Richard 8 says, ironically, we are the Maguire of clubs. It's bad, not as bad as made out, and abused for clicks by the media. Yep, it is bad. I was saying this the other day, it's like, it's weird at United because things are pretty grim at the minute, but we've still got a team full of international footballers, very good players. We've got some world-class players, I'd argue. We've got a team with players that have won multiple Champions Leagues, that have won the Champions League, that are regulars for their country. We finished 3rd last season. We won a trophy. We're in the Champions League. Like, things could be going a lot worse. It's just, when you put it in context, Manchester United, with the money we've spent, with the manager we've got, with some of the players we've got, should be doing a lot better than we are. And you look at some of these performances and some of these games, and it's absolutely infuriating. Levi Pelger says he wants to get rid of players like Maguire and McTominay, but we wouldn't have enough homegrown players. No good. Enough English replacements either. I don't know, how big the homegrown thing is. I think we've got quite a lot of homegrown players. I don't know if that is much of an issue. Hit that like button, people. Let's get to 200 likes before we end the stream. Come on, get involved. Stephanie Griffith says, Liverpool didn't write off last season. Push for Europa, and Klopp backed... sorry, I've just lost that. Backed more than Ten Hag in the last 2 windows. Did you see that, by the way? With one of the Liverpool players was sort of giving grief to the Lask fans, and all the Liverpool fans were buzzing about it. And I just think, how the mighty have fallen, eh? Wasn't that long ago they were talking about winning quadruples and all that nonsense. Now they're in the Europa League and buzzing about the fact that one of their players is giving grief to the fans of a team who were third in the Austrian league. It's just truly pathetic. Let's talk about injuries, because there's a few articles on injuries. I think we've got one here from the Mirror, and it's just more doom and gloom in it. I wish I had better news for you people. Forgive me. It says Man United duo set for extended period out, injured as Eric Ten Hag woes continue. So it says here, Eric Ten Hag was without 12 first-team players when United faced Bayern Munich in the Champions League on Wednesday as his side suffered a third straight defeat. We have to remember that. I was saying earlier how it's his responsibility, it's his team, but there is a little asterisk there that we have a lot of players missing. It says here, Manchester United could have to wait until the November international break to welcome back first-choice defenders Aaron Wan-Bissaka and Luke Shaw, the English duo who last season established themselves as Eric Ten Hag starting right back and left back, respectively. Both missed Wednesday's 4-3 defeat away to Bayern Munich and may not feature again for another 2 months. I will try and be positive about this, though. That's bad news. Shaw had a very good season last season. Wan-Bissaka from January onwards was fantastic. I will say this. Sergio Reguilon has come in and looked the business. Since he's arrived, he's put in, other than the initial little bit of a teething issue when he started against Brighton, he looked very, very good against sort of the last sort of half an hour or whatever against Brighton. He looked really good. And against Bayern Munich, I thought he did well as well. So he's doing well so far. Hopefully he can continue that. Slight concern about the lack of football he's had. He may sort of get a bit knackered quickly, but he's doing a decent job at left back. Also, Diogo Dalot, I know he's not everyone's favourite cup of tea, and against Bayern Munich for their second goal, he perhaps could have done a little bit better. But I think in general, his performances have been quite good this season. I thought he played very well against Arsenal. I know he played on the left, I think. Did he play on the left against Arsenal? But it's not all doom and gloom with those two injuries. I think Dalot and Reguilon can do a job for us. I think the more pressing issue for me has been what's been going on in midfield. We've looked just terrible in midfield, and also at centre-back. Lisandro Martinez doesn't look himself. We've obviously missing Rafael Varane. Varane is such a big player for us. It's frustrating the amount of games he misses, and that's been the main issues that I can see anyway. So the full-back positions, yes, we do want your first-choice full-backs available, but I think Reguilon and Dalot can do a job. Let me know if you disagree. What do you think? Do you think Sergio Reguilon and Diogo Dalot can be our fullback options? Jay Frisconi in Super Chat. Don't forget to hit like as well, people. Come on, let's get to 200 likes. Hit that like button. Says Jay, it's not just the injuries and player issues. I give him a break because he's asked for transfers and he's getting his 4 choices. His plan was Kane and Kim Min-jae, and he's just played against them. Joe was making his point the other day. It's very valid. I think he's making his point on Uncensored. Every time Eric Ten Hag's wanted his first choice, he hasn't got them. He hasn't got his first choice striker, which apparently was Harry Kane. He got Rasmus Højlund instead. He didn't get Kim Min-jae, which was his first choice centre back. He didn't get anyone. He didn't even get his third choice, or whatever you'd call it, left back in Marc Cucurella when we were linked with him. He ended up with Sergio Reguilon. Now I'm actually already going to go early on this one, and I'm going to say I'm glad we did, because I think Reguilon's been a breath of fresh air in the short time he's been at the club. But we never get the first choices. Another first choice he didn't get was Frenkie de Jong. He wanted Frenkie de Jong. Now we got Casemiro. Now at the time everyone was going, well, that worked out better. Did it? Frenkie de Jong's a lot younger than Casemiro, and people looking at Casemiro already and going, I don't know, man, he looks a bit goosed. Like, in his time at Manchester United, Casemiro, he's had some fantastic performances, and his ceiling is so high. When he's on it, he is genuinely as good as any other defensive midfielder in the world. And I'll happily say that, and I believe that, honestly. But he doesn't hit that ceiling very often. He doesn't. And he's had some performances where you go, what's he doing? What's going on? He's not helped a lot of the time by his teammates. I'll give you that one. But even last season, there was a few performances that weren't good enough. And also, he missed quite a few games through suspension. So you could argue that the manager's not really had it all his own way. Just on the Frenkie de Jong story as well. There's an article here in Fijages, I think it is, which is the Spanish publication who do love a United story. They're always doing it. Now, I think we put this through Google Translate, so you have to forgive them, or forgive us, or forgive someone if the English is a little bit broken. It says, Manchester United manager Eric Ten Hag remains deeply interested in signing 26-year-old Barcelona midfielder Frenkie de Jong, and is willing to make a significant effort to secure his signing, according to reports from Fijages. The Dutch international has been on the list of a number of clubs in in recent transfer windows, but the Red Devils have been consistently linked with him. So this is a player that Eric Ten Hag desperately wanted. We know he did. It was it was like we were all in for him, weren't we, in Eric Ten Hag's first transfer window. I think we had a bid accepted. Was it around 80 million quid or something like that? I can't remember the figures, but there was reports that we'd had a bid accepted by Barcelona. Looked like we were going to get him, but then he had this issue with his wages. Barcelona owed him about 20 million quid, so he wasn't ready to just walk away from that. They weren't going to give it him, and then we just basically didn't get him. Then we were linked with Adrian Rabiot, and then we got Casemiro, and everyone was like, oh, Casemiro, he's fantastic. But you can see we still want the lad, according to these reports, and that is another situation where Eric Ten Hag didn't get his man. So yeah, there you go. Joe's just giving me a bit of producer Joe today. Says Manchester United reached €85 million agreement with Barcelona to sign Frankie de Jong. That was the story, I think, when it broke in July 2022. So we reached an agreement to buy Frankie de Jong for €85 million, which is around, a fee of €75 million, 63 million quid. So it must have felt like Eric Ten Hag, I've got my man. He's the guy I want. The bid's been accepted. Let's make this happen. And that felt like a signing where Eric Ten Hag would have been like, I'm going to build my team around this kid. He's a kid I know from Ajax. He was integral to the success I had at Ajax. Put him in the middle of the park. He can dictate the pace of the game. He can pick out them passes. He can do what he does best. Fantastic. I've got my man. Didn't happen. We get Casemiro instead. Great signing. 5-time Champions League winner. No one's going to be moaning about that, are they? Everyone's going to be like, yeah, happy days. I know I was. It's been all right. It could be better, and I don't think he's been helped as well by some of his teammates. I'm going to wrap it up there. Thanks to everyone who got involved in the chat. Renato Tello says, all to get another Ajax player for 90 million. Stephanie Griffith says 149 likes. We got to 151, almost made 200. Not quite though. Come on, we can do better next time. Sharif Manuel says our main problem is recruitment, and it's sad we're buying cheap quality players. Since Ferguson, maybe it's the money that's taking it away. United's wages ain't no problem club. Then players stop performing. A lot of players have stopped performing there. Hopefully, we can sort that out sooner rather than later with the trip to Burnley. We have got a watch-along for that game as well, of course. Don't worry about that. So make sure you are hitting like, share and subscribe. We've also had the preview for the Burnley game going up. We've also got extra content on the members section. Go and check that out. We're back later on with Uncle Webby. Uncle Webby's coming on the brew. So some more of Webby's stories. He had me and Steve spitting out our brews last time. It was that funny. So make sure you are hitting like, share and subscribe. I'm Jay Moy. This has been The Paper Talk. Thanks for watching.